Three, two, one. Murdering went to Wonderland. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first holiday-themed episode of Thursdays with Moire, where we're discussing everybody's favorite topic for the holidays, murder. I'm your host, Dean Taylor. Joining me tonight are my victims, my co-guests, Devin King, amazing artist, musician, and whatnot. And once again, the great, very talented filmmaker Stephen Beason. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
So I have a question for you guys.
I'm alive.
What do you want to do with your What do you want to do with your life?
Oh,
I want to do something so cool that it gets me murdered out in the snow.
Oh,
yeah.
that's true.
Well, I'm trying to decide which is worse.
It's a very painful way to die, but
here's the thing. I'm trying to decide which is worse. You wake up in the morning and you go outside and your backyard is covered in red snow, or you wake up and you go outside in the morning and your backyard is covered in yellow and brown snow.
Oof.
All right, I was trying. There was an attempt at a joke there. We'll cut that. We'll fix it in post.
No, we are absolutely not cutting that.
There was certainly an attempt.
Everybody is dumber for having heard that. I award you no points.
Every bodily fluid.
Tough crowd. I'm gonna tell you, I get no respect.
Reminds me of that famous tragedy.
And speaking of getting no respect, we're gonna be talking about the shitty Murder on the Orient Express remake. But first,
it's time for the actually good adaptation. And according to Agatha Christie, before her untimely death, it is supposedly very accurate adaptation. However, they couldn't quite get Poirot's mustache to be big enough, and that was the one thing that disappointed me. True story.
Just 1 second before you actually introduce Murder on the Orient. So I do want to kind of set this up. This is all about winter murder. We've got Murder on the Orient Express. We've got Insomnia. We've got the Hateful Eight. This is just to, whet your appetite for the wintry wonder that we have prepared for you this month. We normally do a Christmas episode, and we talk about more specifically Christmas films. That really get you in the holiday spirit. I mean, more than this. And so we had everyone on the server submit, three Christmas themed movies, totally unrelated, but just your favorite Christmas movie, something Christmas adjacent. We wound up with, 37 movies.
37 submissions. Wow.
Yeah, 37 submissions. That is a lot of Christmas movies.
I'm scared.
Before we get into the Christmas murdering,
wait, how many of them were Hallmark movies? That's
no, we're fucking I have not recovered from that last Hallmark movie we watched, man.
Right.
Nobody suggested Hallmark movies. I mean, one person did say they wanted us to review Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas.
I mean, close
enough.
God, no. Jesus. If I wanted to review Christian propaganda, I just watched Alex Jones. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, before we get into the episode tonight, Ian,
yes.
would you be so kind as to pull up a random number generator?
I don't wanna. All right, hang on.
You have to.
And it's gotta be done. All right, Kirk Cameron saving
37 die.
All right, yeah. All right, hang on. Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas and Hang on, let me think. Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. Oh, and the Black Christmas remakes coming up.
Oh
right.
yeah, right.
Here we go. So 37 entries, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I got something that'll work here. All right, let's see what we got. 11.
Oh God. Okay.
Why are you so quiet over there, Stephen? What's going on?
I didn't say anything. Let's roll one more time.
Oh boy. Can we roll 2 more times?
Yes.
3 entries.
Two more.
Number 2. Second time, I got a 20.
Yeah, cut out there a little bit.
20.
Second, 20.
20.
Okay, this is freaking me out, Stephen. I don't like this awkward tension. Stephen, are you still with us? Or are you just fucking with us?
No, I am with you. You're cutting out.
I am?
I got number 11.
We have 11, 20, and 20.
11 and 20.
Okay, hold on. Let's try this way. You're cutting out a little bit. All right.
All right. I'll post it in the Discord. 11 and 20.
Right, and you need one more.
All right, rolling again. 17.
17. I
Yes.
will need you to roll again.
7.
Very good. I will need you to roll one last time.
Why?
Just trust me.
You're not rigging the rolls, are you, Steven?
No, of course not. Come on. So
I swear to God, if you're rigging it so we get Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, I will find a way to get to whatever the fuck town you're going to for Christmas and kick your ass.
All right, we're good. So I will reveal the results of that. Yeah, later in the episode.
Oh, I gotta wait. Oh boy.
The democracy. That's democracy for you folks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, an American just rigs the votes, as it always goes. Anyways, Sidney Luimet. Is that how you pronounce his last name, Stephen? Before you lecture me 50 times on it?
Yes.
Sidney Luimet, wee baguette.
Yes, Sidney Lumet's wee baguette. Ha. I'm Hercule Poirot. This is the 1974 adaptation of the very, very famous novel where the great Hercule Poirot, a very exaggerated Belgian private detective who seems a little strange at first, but is actually pretty damn smart when you really get to past his excellent mustache and strange exterior. He boards a train, otherwise known as the Orient Express, where one man, a very infamous man as it turns out, but he didn't reveal at the time, reveals that he fears for his life, and he feels that he is about to be murdered. However, Hercule Poirot refuses at the time, before eventually he does get murdered. And many suspects on the pretty packed train lie in wait. And to make matters worse, the Orient Express is stuck in the snow. So now all the suspects are stuck with Hercule Poirot, and their time is running out before he has to find the real killer. Now, Agatha Christie kind of has like a big part in her family because my mom, spoiler alert, is a huge fan of her work. She has probably almost every book she's ever written, especially for Hercule Poirot. We've watched the Poirot TV show with David Suchet. We've watched every adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express, and this is probably the only good one. Spoiler alert on my thoughts. But there are other questionable adaptations, especially one directed by a man whose first name starts with K and last name ends with H. And yeah, like it's the big part of her household. We've watched many different adaptations. She's an avid reader of her books. And yeah, I enjoy these stories. And I think that's a big part of why I love murder mysteries in the first place. And definitely what brought us to these episodes is because I grew up with a mother that absolutely adored these kinds of stories and that I guess that just kind of rubbed off on me, at least to a certain extent. Now, this film, yeah, it's nowhere near as good as Dog Day Afternoon. It's nowhere near as good as Before the Devil Knows You're Dead or 12 Angry Men, but
Network.
yeah, Network.
We still
Fuck,
have to
I
review.
still have to see that, unfortunately.
Oh
But
man, we
Oh,
gotta review
I
that one.
need to see that. But here, like, usually in these cases, I kind of accuse the director of like not kind of forgetting how to make a movie or losing their way. And I don't really get that impression with this movie. It feels more like he just wanted to take a break. Dog Day Afternoon was like an incredibly stressful production. You know, it
Well,
was always very hot. You know, producers constantly got involved. The conditions weren't the greatest. So he probably wanted something a little more laid back for his next project. Like,
wouldn't
you
say
know,
laid back. I'd say lighthearted. I'd say he was doing something more all ages, I would say. Just from my initial impression seeing the film. I
yeah,
wouldn't
that's
because
fair.
I don't think it lacks any effort whatsoever to call it laid back. I think it's just he's making this for a more open audience and it's more of a little cheesy kind of whodunit, but it works really
Exactly.
well,
Yeah,
I
like
think.
it isn't lazily made. It's very well done from like an acting
Mm.
and filmmaking perspective. It's just, yeah, sure, it doesn't hold a candle to his other films, but I think a big part of that is only because his other films are so great that there just had to be something in his catalog to call his worst movie. But it isn't particularly a bad movie, at least in my opinion. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Well, this is
Well,
the first film that well, I sorry,
do you
go on,
no?
Stephen.
Do you want to go first, or should I?
I had a thought and then it just shot itself out.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll open up with, you know, I consider myself a fan of Sidney Lumet. Dog Day Afternoon is, one of those films that I would consider, probably top 20, 25. I mean, it's up there. It's probably not top 10, but it's very close. And I admire Sidney Lumet. I think all of the performances here, all the actors, are just, you know, phenomenal. And the staging, the presentation. I mean, I think my problem is with this particular film is that, like, this is probably my first introduction to Agatha Christie. This is like the first adaptation of her work. I wasn't really familiar with her stuff before. And so I think that if you're into this style of, whodunit, kind of dry, stuffy, kind of British, it's a little cheesy.
A little bit,
Um,
yeah.
a little bit. And I think if you're into that or you're more accustomed to that, it could be a really good time. And I think, for me, it's kind of just maybe an acquired taste. And that was going to be my review until I watched the remake this morning. Because I thought I had a pretty good grasp on the material, and I thought I had a pretty good idea of what I was talking about. And then I watched the Kenneth Branagh version, and spoiler alert, it is not great.
No. Like, yeah,
Holy
let's
crap.
just shit on the remake real quick, okay? So,
Yeah, I feel like we need to.
yeah,
So,
You know what? I do have one thing to say. The first
please do.
version of this that I saw was the remake. Um,
Oh no! Oh
which
no!
I saw when we had very briefly like a free preview subscription for like HBO, which we didn't end up keeping. Um, but I thought, hey, this isn't bad. At least it looks nice, like and it's a kind of a cheesy old fashioned kind of whodunit thing, but it's definitely like an intentional throwback. Although now that I've seen what it's throwing back to, and I'm like, yeah, they missed some cues, didn't they?
Yeah, they missed the mark entirely. And I think it's important to note that the 1974 version is easily the most accurate to the book. Like, this is one of the few books I've actually read. It's been a while, so I'm a bit hazy on the details, but this definitely feels like the most accurate adaptation. And the remake, it's just along the lines of those factory made remakes that think that oh, all of that important stuff, like interesting characters and important dialogue. Nah, we gotta jack up the violence, we gotta jack up the action, we gotta jack up the sex and the stakes and the political drama to make it more relevant for the kids these days. And Death on the Nile really reeks of that. But I'd argue like the Murder on the Orient Express remake is very guilty of that as well. Like there's so much action for the sake of action. There's a chase scene that wasn't in the original story that didn't need to happen. There's a scene where one character hilariously threatens Poirot at one point that wasn't in the original, that didn't need to happen. Like, anytime I see a remake and I just constantly think that didn't need to be there, I don't even mind changes in a remake just as long as they feel justified beyond just, oh, we need to appeal to a modern audience. Like, the audience came at the expense of, like, maintaining this classic story.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, well, the other thing that bugged me, and I think I even posted about this in the Discord, it's like, why did spoiler? I mean, I guess for the remake, but it's like, why did Michelle Pfeiffer stab herself in the back? And it's like,
Because it's
there's no
dramatic.
it's dramatic. It adds tension, and it's like,
Isn't it ironic?
I mean, here's the thing. It's funny that like I walked away from the original and was like,
Eh.
yeah, and I mean, my kind of like my main contention was really with the material. It's like it's not Sidney Lumet, it's not the performances, it's not the direction or the cast. Um, it's very okay, in my opinion. Now, I could see how this would be, really great for someone else, but it's like it's amazing to watch material that it might not even be my favorite. It might not be, certainly not, the filmmaker's best, but it's like you see material and you see like the best possible version of that, where it's like it's only as good as it is, in my mind, because Sidney Lumet's behind the camera, because
Exactly.
you have Sean Connery, you have um, Ingrid Bergman, you have Lauren Bacall, and I don't want to get into this like there's a very easy rant that you could get into with like uh you know they don't have stars like they used to. This was actually kind of a topic of debate within the last couple of weeks in the headlines, and we'll get into that with Tarantino later, where he's like, Chris Evans isn't a movie star. Captain America's the movie star, and there's this idea of like the death of the Hollywood icon. And it I mean, I don't want to get into that kind of rant, but at the same time, it's like you look at the original and it's like
The
you have
cast is so
Anthony.
good. Yeah.
Well, you have like Anthony Perkins, and then the remake, it's
Yeah.
like Josh Gad.
Yeah, yeah. The remake is Josh Gad, date the girl from Star Wars, and there's some fantastic actors in the remake. It's just they have
I'm
nothing
sure
for it.
Josh Gad realized, that he's no Anthony Perkins, so he didn't try to be. So I'll give him credit for, although I did find the casting of Anthony Perkins really fitting in this as a person with mother issues.
Now he has daddy
No, it
issues.
is.
Yeah.
It is pretty great, though. Yeah.
I just found the dialogue referring to him. It's like very apropos and on the nose. Like, don't I have a surprise for you? This is a movie that you
Yeah,
like.
there is one thing nitpick I don't like about this, the original version. If we're gonna play devil's advocate, is I think like the twist, like it's supposed to be like pretty shocking that everybody, spoiler alert, was involved with the crime, and it's pretty out there for a murder mystery because every murder mystery, it's always one guy. It's always one person conspiring with another person at most. But you gotta consider, like, at the time, like, every suspect doing the crime was, like, not something that happened. But the problem is, in this version, that shock value is kind of lost because I think the twist is a little too obvious with how they filmed in this version. And, like, when, Poirot enters the train for the first time, literally everybody around him is looking at him like, shit. It's just, it's too obvious. Like, even when I've watched this for the first time, I'm just like, he's in on it. He's in on it. she's in on it. Like, there's no way everybody isn't in on it. But you see, like, the other
It's
adaptations.
unfortunate
Yeah.
that the remake spoiled that for me.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
but like in the other versions, like, yeah, as bad as the remake is, it is a little bit smarter in the sense that it doesn't spoil that right away. And I think, to his credit, like, I think he was just trying to make it so that when you go back on a rewatch, you kind of notice the little details that lead up to the final twist. But I feel like they could have been dialed back just a little bit. Like, maybe make it more in the background instead of giving us all these close-ups of these obvious reactions. Like, I don't know. I feel like it went a little too far in that regard.
Here's the thing, though, and this was something I admired about the original versus the remake. Is in the original, the characters. I mean, this is a very kind of quirky, eclectic cast of the who's who of Hollywood, and it's like when you're watching the original, they really do a good job of letting all of these characters have room to breathe. Like it's really fascinating where it's like each character has its own, like, their own personality, their own want, their own desire. What do they want out of this? And they have so much personality.
Well, each person gets it for own interrogation. Like, that's why. Like, it's like, okay, like, every character guaranteed has a moment to shine thanks to the way the story is paced. And not even just the film. Like, that's how it went down in the book.
Well, no, it is. And I mean, the thing is, it's not just the caliber of, like, star power. It's literally just
the pacing.
Like, it's just it's just very well paced. It's very well written. It's very well acted. Like, all of these ingredients are coming together in just the right way. And it's also something that, is very, like, it's kind of indicative of, like, old Hollywood again, where it's like, this wasn't a vanity thing where it's like everybody's trying to shove each other out of the way. Like, you can tell everybody's bringing their absolute best, and they're doing it in such a way that it's like it works in this kind of, like, cohesive way. Like they're bringing their best, they're letting themselves shine, and everyone else is better for it.
Absolutely.
And it's like chef's kiss. Mwah. And then you look at the fucking remake, and it's like, let me watch 3 hours.
Yeah, and they said, fuck that. Yeah.
His own dick.
Yo, man, yes. And I don't think there's any irony that one of the biggest changes in the remakes was a lot of dialogue that conveniently talks about how great Hercule Poirot is and how talented he is and how, like, he did so well on this case that he gets to go do another case in the next movie. Like, it's so obnoxious.
No, it is obnoxious. And at the very end, like, there's a whole line about, like, the only people who will know the truth are myself, Hercule Poirot, and God. And it's like, wow. Comparing yourself to God. Holy shit, man. This is like, it's honestly, it's as bad as, like, we've talked about Buffalo 66, where it's like Vincent Gallo has a character compliment his dick coming out of the bathroom. Like, that, the level of dick sucking that you would have to reach to compare yourself to God. I mean, that would make Vincent Gallo.
Death on the Nile will give you put you into a coma.
we'll get more into that topic later, but one thing I do appreciate about the remake is just the look of it, like the general look and the aesthetic upgrade. But beyond that, it does seem like shallow.
Well, I don't know that I agree. The CGI train looks awful.
Oh god, that was one better thing than the original. Like, and here's the thing, like, the cinematography in the remake, yeah, it's very stylish, it's very unique. There's a lot of experimental shots. But I kind of alluded to this in the Candyman remake, where it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't add anything to the movie. Like, every shot in the original version is like, it's building some kind of atmosphere. It's pointing us in the mind of Hercule Poirot. There's a reason for the shots to be the way they are. Whereas, in comparison, the remake feels like a student film. It's the equivalent of that, like, cool drone shot, long take drone shot you saw on YouTube. It's like, okay, this is great, but what does it mean beyond just being a tech demo? well, nothing really. It's completely style over substance.
Yeah, I mean, but with regards to the original, I mean, again, it's like
It's a real train shot in awful weather, and even like the backdrops where like I don't know how they pulled that off. They probably just used projector footage of like the backdrops in the windows, but even that looked way more convincing than like the advanced technology backdrops inside of the train. Like I don't know how we went backwards
well,
in technology.
there's
You're
You kind
cutting in and out.
there was Ebert. No, there was a quote. It may have been from like Roger Ebert, but it was around the time that this was released, and it was something to the effect of like, if this movie had been made in the 1940s or 50s, it probably would have been like a B movie, and you would have had like 1 to 2 stars, and you would have had like some studio players and contract character actors and stuff, and it would have been a really good B movie, but it would have been like a black and white little B movie. And
Yeah.
the thing about that is I feel like this is maybe I feel like this is an homage to that kind of era, and I
Hmm.
feel like
a
it's
little
an
bit.
homage to
I thought there was like an original movie from the 30s for some reason.
I believe the Sidney Lumet version is the first adaptation. I did find out that like in the early 2000s they made a direct to TV
Yeah, that was
adaptation
in
with
the Perot TV series, if I'm not mistaken.
with Alfred Molina
No,
as
never
Perot.
mind. I stand
Yeah.
corrected. So yeah, that's right.
Um,
There was the TV movie, and then there was the David Suchet version, which is very inaccurate, but at least the actors were way better than the movie.
well, so here's my thing. It's like I feel like for what it is, I feel like this is the best possible interpretation. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the material here. I don't know that this is particularly something that I would revisit, or if I would call it, like, I don't know. I mean, and I do consider myself a fan of Sidney Lumet. I'm embarrassingly not as uh, up to date on his filmography. There's a lot that I still need to see, like Network and like 12 Angry Men. But,
Yeah.
this is one of those cases where it's like, in all honesty, I probably would not have watched this film if it wasn't for the podcast. And so, if nothing else, like I'm glad to have seen it. Like I think it's worth watching, if nothing else, just for the dedication and craft that went into it.
Also,
And
it
to
kind of weirdly fits the holiday season. Like you guys say these aren't Christmas movies. This movie has kind of become like a holiday tradition. Like something about like the beautiful snowy scenery and the tight, warm spaces inside of the train and the like somewhat moderately like goofy nature of the story. Like I don't know, just
Yeah.
brings out the
I
Christmas
see it.
spirit.
Like if I mean I don't necessarily get Christmas, but just for the season for sure. And if you wanted something that was different than your typical Christmas movie, just to watch that was um kind of light. Like it's a murder mystery, but it's not super serious or it's not super like adult oriented, I would say. Like it's accessible to all ages.
Mhm.
And I do think the writing is pretty good, if not very on the nose.
A
Um,
little bit, yeah.
but
a little bit.
it's very intriguing though. Like this is a movie that if you wanted to if you wanted to show your kids something that was a little more adult but not super adult, but it's still kind of a fun kind of mystery, then this yeah could easily fit that bill.
Yeah, and I recommend it. I'm not mad that I saw it. I was never once bored with it. Is it particularly my thing? No, it's not. But I mean, like, it's one of those weird cases where it's like,
Hard to hate.
I don't know. No, it's hard to hate. Yeah, it's that, but it's
Exactly.
also like I came here ready to give it one rating, and then I saw the remake, and I was like, oh, this is
We gotta
this is
crank
like
that up, yeah.
I gotta crank this up just out of respect. So
What would you rate it?
Uh, uh, you know what? I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Nice.
I'm giving this 6.9.
That's
Yeah,
what I was gonna give.
I know it's not perfect. Like I said, it makes the twist a little too obvious. I don't know if I entirely agree that the ensemble cast gets as much time as they should. They get more time than versus other adaptations, but I feel like that's something that makes it really hard to adapt to the silver screen. And there's still like plot holes that bug me about the movie, but yeah, overall, it's not his best work, but it doesn't need to be. It's a very nice, relaxing movie, and I think he made it for that very reason. So I'll give him points for that. And the remake gets a very, very, very generous 4 out of 10. Some of the actors tried. That's
I
basically my
I
compliment.
would, yeah, I would give it about a 4 as well. It is wow.
Yeah,
and,
I tried to
and
warn you guys. You were just like, oh, I'll watch the remake for research. I'm like, please don't do it.
no, I mean, well, I'm glad I did because I probably would not have given the original as high a score as I did.
Fair enough.
Honestly, though, it was probably a red flag whenever I saw Johnny Depp as one of the top billed cast, and it's not 1992 or whatever. So, uh,
Yeah, that's a little weird.
But
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
everything after everything after Tusk has just been downhill, right?
like this
Wow.
is this is a very watchable kind of nice movie. It's not one that I would seek out necessarily, but at least it doesn't smell of the fish.
No. Oh God. Yeah, and he
That
steps in shit and a poo poo joke.
it's one of those like so bad it's cringe, but but still kind of funny. Ironically, like lines from the remake.
Oh,
It's because of the fish.
with regards to the remake, I have to ask something. Uh, what was the book that Kenneth Branagh kept reading?
Oh yeah. Sorry. So I forgot what book it was, but there's a point where he reads a book in his quarters and he laughs at it, and my mom literally whispered in the theater, "What the fuck?" And we were leaving. I'm just like, "Well, what do you mean? What the fuck?" I'm like, "He's reading like one of the most depressing books of all time." And he's
No, I
laughing at
noticed that.
it.
No, I noticed that, and I tried to pause and read the title, and I could never make it out. But
uh, yeah. Hang on, I'm trying to
I
find out
get
what book does Perot read.
but I'm also not gonna go back and watch the movie to find out.
Yeah, I
So
know, right? Yeah, it's not worth it. A fall to I. It doesn't matter. Don't watch the remake, please.
okay, well, speaking of forcing ourselves to stay awake,
Or watch the remake. Who cares? I didn't mind it.
All right, moving
uh,
on.
moving right along.
Insomnia, 2002, directed by Christopher Nolan. Um, our boy.
Christoph.
Is this
Yes,
the first film we've talked about from him on this podcast?
it it might be. Oh no,
Is
no,
it really?
no, it is not. We talked about Tenet on like our
That's
very
right.
first recorded episode, which man, we
Oh,
gotta. Yeah, well, we were comparing Tenet with Primer. I highly recommend Primer. I actually just got the Blu-ray of it, and man, we gotta re-review that one sometime. Go back
Absolutely.
in time and
Do
yeah.
primer, upstream color, and we'll just find a companion piece.
Yeah, unfortunately, Shane Pertha only made 2 movies, which really sucked. But I think he starred in some other ones though. We could do a whole truth. Anyway, off topic. Insomnia. Very fittingly, I rewatched this while suffering from it, which seemed to make it all the more immersive. Even though I'm very fuzzy on the details now. Um, it stars Al Pacino, and who plays a cop from LA who is sent up north to I believe it's Alaska, right?
Alaska. Yes.
Yes, to investigate a murder of this girl. Um, and when he gets there, I really love how they open this up. He doesn't realize that it's 10 o'clock at night, but it still looks like the middle of the day. And from there on, his disorientation with being up in this part of the world where it's basically daylight all during this time of year, it's very disorienting. And this is one of the films that really captures. So I was diagnosed years ago with narcolepsy. Um, not anymore. But anyway, um, I remember like this film really captures what that feels like if you're really sleep deprived and you just start seeing things and your perception of stuff is just kind of all over the place. This film captures that like really beautifully, so I connected with it almost immediately in that sense. Um, but I think this is honestly Christopher Nolan's probably most underrated film.
Yep.
I personally, and I know this might be a hot take, like it more than The Prestige.
Ooh,
Interesting.
that's a tough one. I'd say they're on like
Yeah,
the same
and
camp.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, but you could call this Nolan's worst movie, and it's still excellent.
Yeah. Also they're wrong. Like
But
far
as
from the
well,
same.
until maybe more maybe more recently,
That's
you
fair.
could say that perhaps. Um, with I'm still curious how I think about Tenet. I haven't revisited it in a while. I may have to watch it backwards to make sense of it. But anyway, um, so Hilary Swank is this up and coming investigator who really does her homework and really goes by the book. Um, and Al Pacino, while investigating this murder, accidentally shoots one of the other people that are working on the case, Hap. And because they were in this thick fog, which I absolutely love the staging of the scene, I was actually really considering using the poster where it's just a crop of him kind of going through the fog. And he accidentally shoots this person, which he tries to cover up because that doesn't look good. That he accidentally shot someone, and then and as the case goes further and he's getting more and more sleepless, the fog of what's happening becomes thicker and thicker, and mm, I just cannot express in words just how beautifully orchestrated this film is. I think it's really well put together, and one of the better, very serious roles that Robin Williams pulls off. Like you almost have very little of the Robin Williams charisma that he's known for, but I think he does a very phenomenal, subtle performance for this kind of character. It's very
Absolutely.
compelling.
Yeah. Before I get into my thoughts, I want to hear what Steven thinks. Steven, I think this is your first time watching it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I have to be totally honest. Christopher Nolan is pretty hit or miss for me. It's
Hmm.
bizarre because Memento um, is one of those films that is probably like a top 10. I mean, top
Oh yeah.
15. It's a masterpiece. I think it is well deserving of all of the praise that it's gotten, and I think it actually deserves more. And when I was watching this, um, this was also like Christopher Nolan's follow up to Memento, and it, I know we're going to get to Tarantino later, but this kind of reminds me of what Tarantino did with Jackie Brown, um,
Mm.
because Tarantino made Reservoir Dogs, very small budget, low sort of indie crime film, which you could compare that to Christopher Nolan's The Following. And then there's like Pulp Fiction, which really changes the landscape of cinema. It, reinvents the wheel. It creates this new language in a way. And for Christopher Nolan, that was Memento. And I feel like what Tarantino did with Jackie Brown was he took a step back and he's like, I'm going to adapt someone else's work and I'm going to try and put my style or my spin on something a little bit more grounded and a little bit more down to earth. And I feel like that's what Nolan is doing here with Insomnia. It is one of the first, if not the only, film that is not written by Christopher Nolan in any sense. It's actually a remake, kind of reimagining, I believe, of a Swedish film,
The
possibly Norwegian.
1997 film of the same name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's incredibly uh, underrated. I agree with Devin 100%. I'm actually kicking myself that I hadn't seen it sooner. And there are, quite a few films of Nolan's filmography that I have not seen yet. I haven't seen, The Prestige or Interstellar. But again, it's like Tenet was just awful in my opinion. I thought it was really bad. And Inception is one of those that, like, the more times I watch it, the glimmer kind of wears off on it. It's like I think that doesn't have a lot of great rewatch value. And um I to kind of segue this, and compare Nolan to like another filmmaker. Um that Nolan has expressed a lot of admiration for Denis Villeneuve, which I find kind of funny because a lot of the same issues that I have with Villeneuve, I have with Nolan,
Really?
where it's like,
Hmm.
no, 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 just hear me out. Where it's
Alrighty.
like when they're grounded and they have some kind of like basis in reality, when it's something like Polytechnique or it's something like Prisoners, I really connect with it. And it winds up being like one of my favorite films of all time. And it's when they kind of get too big and they're not exactly reined in, when it's something like, Arrival or Tenet or what have you, that it's like I kind of lose focus. I get confused. I lose the plot. There's something disconnected. But this I was thoroughly engaged with. I was actually really surprised with how well it held up and just how human it felt. It was very surprisingly heartfelt, and yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely love this movie. Actually Chris Stuckman, special shout out to his channel. He actually introduced me to this film, and I remember like reading his review. I'm just like, oh well, this didn't get great reviews. It probably isn't very good. And then I listened to the review. I'm like, what have I been missing? And like, this sounds amazing. And I watched it,
Yeah.
and yeah, like it definitely lived up to those expectations. And I actually saw the original film in preparation. You did your research on Murder on the Orient Express. I figured I'd do my research on the original Insomnia. And there's a lot of controversy. Talked about this in film noir class back at Fanshawe, where there was a lot of controversy that like this film lost a lot of edge compared to the original version. And I disagree. Like I love the style of the original film. I love Stone Skarsgård to death, but I think the original is a prime example of edgier and darker doesn't inherently mean better. Like, it really just reeks of trying too hard, in my opinion. Like it tries too hard to be edgy. It tries too hard to make these characters cruel, but it doesn't balance that out in any way. Whereas this version does a great job of balancing that out. Not only are the characters actually intelligent in this version, not only does it actually depict what it's like to experience sleep deprivation to an uncomfortably relatable degree. Like I have partial sleep insomnia, and this movie absolutely nails it. If anybody ever wants to know like what I'm going through with my sleep deprivation, yeah, just check out this movie. It's pretty accurate,
No, like
unfortunately.
I absolutely love the sequences where there are these background sounds that he can't help but focus on, like the conversation up front, like just drowns out, and he just hears like the motor of the fan, and you have these like um jump cuts and pulls of focus on like just background details, which is exactly what at least my brain does, or what I do when I'm really sleep deprived. Just these like these humming noises, anything that kind of lulls you to sleep when you're really trying to fight to stay awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Eh,
actually, I remember going to fan shot. This is a bit of a tangent, but I remember listening back to like I had a little audio recorder because I needed to like take notes after the fact. I used that, and I remember just hearing there was this like motor noise that they had in the classrooms, and that shit like put me to sleep, and I didn't realize just how much of an effect that had. Um, just when I was just in those classrooms, just that just droning motor from the other room really really puts up my concentration
Yeah, you
when I
think
was
that
there.
would have the opposite effect, but it really doesn't. And everything
No,
feel around you feels like slower and heavier. And I think the part I relate to the most, unfortunately, was when he's driving and his vision like blurs and blurs, and he focuses on like the windshield wipers when he isn't really paying attention to the road. That is something I've experienced myself. I don't drive, but there are times when I'm walking home to my apartment and I am so tired. Even if I didn't have a long day of work, I just had a really bad sleep, and I'm so tired that I actively have to stay awake just to walk to my apartment and open up the door and come home. And I'm constantly like squinting. I'm constantly like trying to keep myself awake and fight the urge to fall asleep just on the way to my front doorstep. And that's something this movie really nails. But most of all, like it really is an example of a good remake where the director puts their own stamp on it. Like, it doesn't take place in the same location. The detectives have a different feel to them. Like, they're more like goofy and laid back, and kind of remind me of Twin Peaks a little bit. Like the detectives in Twin Peaks in a weird, strange way. Like he is. I don't think he's trying to replicate the original to a T. He's just taking his own take on it, and you can interpret that as Hollywoodization all you want, but I think especially in comparison to all the cynical remakes we get these days, this is definitely a cut above, and I don't think it deserves that criticism, to be honest.
No, and I mean, I can't speak to the original. I haven't, seen it. But I mean, it does, just from what little bit I've read and kind of seen and kind of looked up on my own time, it does feel very respectful. It does feel like its own thing. It's also like it does have those Nolan touches, but it also feels like there's times where you're talking about Twin Peaks, but it's like it almost reminds me of like David Fincher or Martin Scorsese or something. Like there's those elements from, and I think what that is it's like a love letter to genre. It's noir and detective and these kind of slow burn psychological crime thrillers. And I think especially like for a decade that is like packed with some of the best of those, just a couple of years after this, we got, it was actually just a few years before, rather, that you had like Seven, and films like that. I mean, I think this really stands on its own.
Absolutely.
And I think that is impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, like I just
only thing.
go on.
No. I was just gonna say the only thing, like, if I absolutely had to nitpick, and this is something that I see a lot of people argue in the film's favor, and I agree to an extent, but Al Pacino and Robin Williams in this, their performances are very muted. These are normally actors that are known for kind of going over the top or, very like loud and brash. And, I'm not saying that I want.
I mean, he does get pretty loud and brash at several points in the story. The fuck you care?
Or like belongs in the trash.
No,
garbage bags.
Yeah, I love that, and I wish there was more of that. I
don't know. I think it works from this perspective of, yeah, he's very tired, he's very stressed out. If you want an actor who looks tired, no better than old Al Pacino. Holy shit, he just looks so out of it in so many scenes.
It's not Al anymore.
But I think that works in favor of the movie. If it was another performance, I'd maybe agree that it feels like a little bit out of place, but for these characters in this kind of movie, for two characters that are dealing with sleep deprivation and very, very different feelings towards the murders they just committed, whereas Robert Williams is simply disconnected from it, Al Pacino doesn't really know how to feel, and that's reflected through his sleep deprivation. Like, I think it works for these characters, and the few moments he does freak out, it work, because there are times when I am so tired and so stressed out that I just I just have no idea when I'm gonna pop. It feels like the smallest things could really get to me and piss me off. And the few scenes where he does freak out are more effective because he isn't doing it constantly. Like in Heat, like it fits in Heat, but it does. The magic wears a little bit thin after a while if he keeps like doing it, but in this movie, it's like he saves those Al Pacino moments for when it really counts, and I appreciate that.
Well, and we should talk about just really quickly, like with regards to the garbage bags.
The garbage bags. Like that scene is so upsetting. Like, and a lot of people said, like, oh, it's not as dark as the original, because in the original, he tried to sexually assault her, which doesn't make sense for two reasons. First off,
No, it doesn't.
She clearly tries to flirt with him in both versions. And so the fact that it suddenly becomes sexual assault in the original version is a little muddled. Like, it just feels like shock value for the sake of shock value. And secondly, almost getting run over on the side of the road and killing yourself and the driver beside you is pretty messed up enough, but it also feels like an exploration of his character, where he just doesn't care at this point. He's just so like reckless with his sleepless behavior that he doesn't care what happens to him, and that affects the people around him.
Yeah, and he's trying to get a message to her, like this, this girl died, and she, that you say is your best friend, but she doesn't seem to care, and she's trying to flirt with him. He's trying to bring her back to reality, saying, "This is where we found your friend, literally buried in the dump," and just trying to,
Yeah,
trying to bring her back to that, just trying to get back to that reality because he needs to find the information, right?
And the thing is, he's supposed to be an intelligent cop in both versions, and getting your prints all over a grieving person is not a good idea. But almost getting run over could be a miss, because you could just be like, I just wasn't paying attention to the road. I didn't do anything wrong. You don't have any evidence against me. I'd buy that his character would do that more.
So real quick, did anyone recognize? We may have reviewed one of her films once before.
Ooh, wait. You talking about Blondie?
The
bartender?
No. The girl that he points out all the garbage bags to.
Yeah. God. Yeah, she did look familiar. Help me out here.
That is Catherine Isabel of Ginger Snaps. Yes,
I thought I recognized her.
No fucking shit. I should have realized that. I was just like, this girl looks familiar.
Now that you say it, it's like that. Yeah. Now that you say that we reviewed it, I'm like, okay, yeah. I thought I recognized her.
Yeah, she's great in this too.
Yeah, and she's great. Like she works perfect for the character.
She's only on screen for like 1.5 scenes, really, but she's excellent in all of it.
She crushes it. Yeah, and also, speaking of like young actors who are great in a few scenes, like the actor who plays Danny, the dead girl's boyfriend, like he's really good as well. Like he definitely nails it. I love the scene when they're in the classroom and he's like, "Don't smoke indoors," and Al Pacino just questions him. Doesn't care.
He reminds me of the one kid from Twin Peaks, but a lot more toned down and realistic.
Yeah. Somehow this is more toned down and realistic. I love when he just drags this table over. He's just like, this fuck the world routine. You might work on your parents. A couple of these local cops that think you're too stupid to enter yourself into a crime scene. But I know things. I know you beat your girlfriend. And I know that she was into somebody else. Man, I just it's so good, and like the awkward dragging of the table adds to the scene, and it's a lot of like great attention to detail in this movie. Like it's very well edited. All of the touches for the Insomnia are great. It looks beautiful. I really want to go to Alaska after watching this movie. I'm like, God damn, Alaska's gorgeous. Like it's atmospheric, of course, but this is beautiful. And, of course, the late, great Robin Williams.
Phenomenal.
Fantastic. He is so good in this movie. I was surprised. Like, at first I heard, like, he was playing the bad guy. I'm like, oh, really? Especially considering, like, the bad guy in the original is pretty good, too. But Robin Williams, oh, man. Like, it's just... My dad watched it, and he's just like, Robin, I don't want this to be your last image. And he meant that as a compliment because he played a sociopathic villain so well. that it like left an impact with me. It doesn't really get affected by characters too often, but something about Robin Williams' character
Well,
in this like really got under his skin.
well, it's also funny because I mentioned in passing to my mom, I was like, oh, I watched this movie, called Insomnia, and it's Al Pacino, and he's tracking a serial killer who's played by Robin Williams, and she was like, oh, I saw that. And she was like, "But I didn't care for Robin Williams in that at all." And I was like, "Oh, you mean like bad performance? I mean, what do you mean?" And she's like, "No, he's just really creepy." Like,
Yeah,
No, no,
exactly.
it's like
his performance is so
she's
good, and
no,
there's
no.
this and
She
1 hour
was
photo he plays. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, no. She was just like, it's so hard to see him as anything but like the good guy. It's like,
yeah,
and in this, he's like a murderous pedophile. Um, it's
yeah,
just
and he's just
it.
so casual about it. And the phone call where he explains what he did and tries to make himself look like the good guy at any turn. Even what he says is like, I beat her, like just to show a little respect. Like that could have at least been a moment where you admitted that you did something
yeah. It's like,
horrible.
but and he almost sounds relatable to an extent when he's like, "Have you ever had someone laugh at you when you were vulnerable like that?" And it's like, and then he puts himself at that point of no return. Like, damn,
Yeah,
slippery slope.
exactly.
It
Like it's
it
just
it's creepy crawlies. I mean, just
Oh yeah.
yeah. And of
No, it's
course,
and
chilling.
yeah.
It's chilling because it sounds like a very real kind of internal motivation for that kind of thing,
well,
and
and
it's just
the
it's
whole
just troubling to
sequence.
see like Robin Williams, just given his reputation from previous films, just expressing that.
I think it's good casting too because the thing is like this character, this writer is supposed to be someone the last person you'd expect to be this cruel, cold murderer. They made a more of a pointed statement about that in the original version. So getting someone like Robin Williams, the last actor you'd expect to play like a cold-hearted bastard, is perfect casting in that sense because it reflects the character.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean it's also like that whole sequence where like Al Pacino takes the tape recorder from him, and it's like exactly what Robin Williams wanted him to do. I mean, it is
Yeah, like
God.
normally the trope of like the villain being a step ahead of everybody is like really tropey and really stupid. But here, like I don't know, like they just do a good job of selling it, and you get the impression that he's always just thinking about what to say. He isn't as brash as Al Pacino's character is, and there's an interesting
Well, and
contrast in that sense.
it's also just that like I don't know. I mean, you also like I think part of it is Al Pacino's character is so believably at a disadvantage because of his insomnia, and so it feels very like it feels realistic that someone could get the drop on him just like for sheer mental like capability. You know,
Absolutely, like
Oh
he
yeah,
thinks like he knows the job inside and out.
yeah, and there's all those sequences where like Al Pacino's holding the gun to him, and he says, "You're not thinking straight. Well, you're exhausted," and he's right to an extent, but also it's like having that psychological advantage.
Manipulative.
well,
He's like
he's
suffering.
trying to get in his head, and it's just, I mean, it is, ugh,
Yeah,
it's,
it's
yeah,
genuinely disturbing.
It's
Yeah,
unnerving, and
yeah,
it's effective.
exactly. And people say like this lost its edge compared to the original film, but I think this film works better because there is more moral ambiguity to it. Like there's light to balance out all of the darkness hidden underneath. That's another reason why it reminded me a lot of Twin Peaks is because you have this sunny, bright environment, and the opening to the film is like cheesy, but almost intentionally so, where like a lot of characters are cracking jokes and everybody's like excited to go to work, but as soon as his partner drops the hard ball that he's gonna have to cut a deal, you kind of start to see not only the dark underbelly of Al Pacino's character, but the environment around him as well. And that stark contrast is like really, really well expressed. Whereas in the original, it's all dark, it's all miserable, and I don't know, that just isn't as interesting to me personally. I mean, if that resonates with you more, good. I'm happy with you, but I think you need to balance that out with lighthearted moments. And like the side detective characters are genuinely funny. Like I like the scene where Hilary Swank is going over the crime scene, and one guy's like, "Ah, I'm cold. Can we go inside already?" It's like, "Oh, is that blood over there?" No, it's ketchup. They eat a hot dog. It's like that's genuinely like entertaining, and you contrast that with really dark, sadistic scenes, and it just has those scenes have more an effect because of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like, you can definitely go too far overboard with the kind of
Absolutely,
uh, nihilism. And I feel like, I mean, again, I haven't seen the original, but I can say pretty comfortably this is a pretty dark film. I mean, it is very uncomfortable and very unsettling, like just in the way that it's edited and it's presented. I mean, it is. There's these brief flashes of things happening, and you don't really find out why they're happening, or what they're flashing back to until the very end. And it's unnerving, and it really does a good job of putting you in that character's position. And I think, yeah, I mean, just like for meme's sake, I kind of wish they had let Pacino or Williams kind of like burst out a little bit more. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I do like this sort of reserved, quiet intensity that they wind up pulling off, and I think it actually probably works for the best.
absolutely,
Um,
it
Oh
fits the
yeah, it makes it
narrative.
feel more realistic. It makes it feel more
Absolutely,
realistic.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
for sure. And if you're looking for another very reserved Al Pacino performance in a crime thriller, this is where I plug William Friedkin's Cruising with Al
Oh, yeah.
Pacino, which is a fantastic film that I will not shut up about until we review on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, Willem
Uh,
Dave. I mean, if you're talking about reserved performances, nothing's more reserved than the first two Godfather movies, especially the first one. Like you see, like
well,
younger Pacino compared to older Pacino, it's like they're different actors, and you need to cast differently to fit like their strengths at different points in time. It's just very
and
interesting.
yeah, so Cruising and the Godfather sequels, 1 and 2 for that. If you want Pacino at his least reserved, I would say Heat. Uh,
Yep.
Oh yeah. He's
he's
got
got
a great
great
ass.
ass,
Yours.
and you can feel
Oh,
it all the way up.
sir. Oh, he's so good in that movie, though.
No,
Or Godfather 3.
Yeah,
there you
where he's supposed
I
to be like the subtle character from the first two movies, but it's old Pacino.
I can't hurt. Harmless noise. Bullshit. I love that.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And
go.
it fits perfectly because he's a tired, stressed out cop that's coked out all the time and is dealing with too much bullshit in his life to deal with any
You
bullshit in his
probably
actual job. So it
you could
fits.
probably draw a very fine line between pre Starface Al Pacino and post Starface Al Pacino.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
Absolutely.
God, I do not care for Scarface. That is
It's
Really.
fine. It's okay. It's fun,
I
but I wouldn't say it's
I
good.
have problems with it because I love Brian De Palma, and I think that it is
I mean, it's basically Oliver
unfortunate that
Stone's movie, apparently. So,
basically, yeah, and I kind of hate that that's the movie that people probably most know De Palma for, whether they
well, that
realize it
and
or
Mission
not.
Impossible. In fairness, the first Mission Impossible.
Dun dun
Which,
dun dun dun.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah, we'll talk about that on a different day,
well,
maybe.
yes, definitely.
But right now, we gotta give some ratings. Oh, sorry. Did you guys have any problems with it? I mean, like Devin in particular. I know, Steven, you wanted more of that Dunkachino, but Devin, did you have any problems with Insomnia?
The only problem I had with it is the fact it gave me that.
I mean, I had it regardless, so I can't really
I
twist it
yeah,
from
I
that.
was suffering from insomnia while watching the film, which seems fitting, but it's just been a rough week.
Foreshadowing.
I don't have any problems with the movie. I'm giving it 9.6.
Nice.
Ooh,
My
nice.
only nitpicks are I don't know if it was because of the copy I watched, but Christopher Nolan's classic problem of having the dialogue be really quiet and the music be really loud was really apparent in a lot of scenes. So I was having to adjust the remote at several occasions, and There's a few cheesy lines
It
here and
helps
there.
if you have subtitles. I watched. I have a Blu-ray copy of it and on a kind of new sound system, and it actually sounded really good to me. So I didn't have that issue on my end.
That's fair. It may have just been. It's an older Blu-ray too, and they can have questionable transfers, so maybe it was just issue with
I
that.
imagine it's just how your speakers might be reproducing it, how it's set up, maybe.
That's fair. And yeah, and some of the lines are kind of cheesy, but the actors do such a good job of selling it that it really isn't a major issue. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. I'd say it's one of Christopher Nolan's best. Definitely check it out if you haven't. And I prefer it over the remakes, so feel free to fight me on edgelords. Couldn't finish that sentence.
Yeah,
Steven, what are you giving it?
I give it an 8.5. It's
Nice.
probably one of my favorite Nolan films. I really liked it. Not my favorite Al Pacino cop film, not my favorite Nolan, but deserving of more praise, definitely.
Oh yeah, this is my second time watching it, but I think I'm giving it more praise on a second viewing because I think it holds up really well. Like I personally think.
So,
Yeah.
I rated it an 8.5. And speaking of 8,
Oh. Boo! You suck.
Transition.
I deserve that. The Hateful Eight. Ooh,
It would have
is
been
a
more fitting
20.
if we were doing the 8.5.
Well, the
Whatever.
Hateful Eight is a 2015 American Western mystery thriller film. It is written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. An all-star cast of Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Walton Goggins, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Bruce Dern, all of which are 8 strangers seeking refuge from a blizzard in a stagecoach stopover sometime after the Civil War. Now, I have to kind of I have to kind of set this up because this is really the first time that I feel like I've seen this film. I've seen
Really?
it. Well, I've seen it once before, and the mood was not right to watch this film. I'll put it that way.
Mm.
So this film came out in 20,
2015.
2015. So I would have been about 20 years old, probably just turned 20. And I, obviously still living at home. My mom was kind of like flipping through cable and pay-per-view and was like, "Hey, don't you don't you like that Quentin Tarantino fella?" And I said, "Oh yeah, his movies are pretty good." Well, he's got a new movie out, and if you want to watch it, I think this was probably close to my birthday as well. So it's
Mm.
like, let's rent this and watch this. So I wound up watching it with my mom. Now, my
Okay,
mom,
that's I can see the issue now.
no. Just
Yep.
let me get there. So my mom's pretty cool. I mean, she showed me, Goodfellas. She showed me, a lot of movies at my adolescent age that were, mostly appropriate. I mean, she wasn't like a spaz or anything about it. She was cool, but so we sit down to watch this, and she loves westerns. This was kind of like a tradition that was passed down from my grandfather. And she grew up with the Clint Eastwoods and the John Waynes and stuff, and so we're watching this, and she's actually getting into it. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's kind of there's this kind of like dark, ironic tone throughout it. But she's having a good time. It's very like it's darkly comedic, and there's something there. There's intrigue, and it's all going pretty well. Aside from the fact that
Oh no, here
she's
it
not
comes.
she's well she's not
Literally, yeah.
crazy she's not crazy about the whole treatment of the only woman in the film.
Fair
Oh,
enough.
But for the most part, it's going okay. And then there's a certain scene in this movie.
speak of
Which
coming.
one was it, Steven?
Big black ninja.
Suck my chest.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the guitar scene, which still
Oh
pisses
yeah.
me off.
And
So
so here,
yeah,
well,
anyway.
wait a
We'll
minute.
get to
I
that in a
gotta
bit.
finish
Yeah.
this. So the worst part of the experience is when Samuel L. Jackson says to Bruce Dern, he's like, "You know what your boy did?" And it's like, now I know what's gonna happen. But it's
No.
like it's too late to stop it. And it's gonna be even worse if I'm like, "Hey mom, you should probably close your eyes. There's gonna be
Why?
some like dick
Well.
sucking." Yeah. And it's like, well, where did you get that idea? And so it's like, do I even say anything? Do I just sit there?
Yeah, it's a
And it's
spoiler, I
like,
guess. Yeah.
Well,
this is gonna be awkward regardless. And so I'm just like, he's not gonna do it. He's not gonna go through with it. And of course,
it
it
doesn't.
comes up in glorious 70 millimeter.
This is this is like the ending of Infomaniac. It's like he's not gonna do it. No, and then he does it. Like,
Oh.
oh fuck you.
How does he keep getting away with it? And it's
Oh man. So I actually saw this on glorious 70 millimeter, and I
Ooh,
will
oh,
continue
aw,
to brag
lucky.
that. But no, I was on a 70 millimeter kick for a while. Like we had Interstellar that came out um prior to this, and I loved that film, seeing it in the theater when it first came out, I'll say. Um and then I heard that Tarantino was making a new film with 70 millimeter, and I had to see it. The only Tarantino film I had seen in theater prior to that was Django Unchained. I absolutely loved that movie. Um, I was catching up to all of his works until this point, so I was completely on board with all the marketing, talking about the whole roadshow experience, how there was going to be an actual intermission where there's a 15-minute break in between. And I went to like the one theater that was close by that was showing it, which was downtown Toronto, so a nice 2-hour drive from where I am, to get there. And I was all on board for it. And I went there with some friends of mine. Although our seats were kind of way at the back, so it was really hard to appreciate all the grain and detail. But I thought it looked fantastic cinematography wise. Bob Richardson was the cinematographer on this project, and the way he like overexposes certain highlights really looks great. Um, my one friend actually couldn't believe that was like an in-camera effect for some reason, just because it was so different than what we would normally be used to seeing.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, I was enamored by the technicalities of all of it. Although this isn't my favorite Tarantino film, it does hold up like pretty well still. But it was at this point that I really started. I guess after this, really wasn't super huge into Tarantino following. I know Steven, you have a great love for um, uh, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think it's okay. Um,
Ooh.
but yeah, this is pretty much the peak of my enjoyment of Tarantino for the most part.
yeah.
That's
I mean,
fair.
I, I absolutely loved Hollywood. I can understand if that's not for
Mhm.
everyone
It's
because it
very
is.
different film, especially in his
It's a very
filmography.
different film, and it's very self-indulgent,
Yep.
and this is kind of that way too. Um,
Yeah.
my thing was I had very little memory of this film except my mom, oh my god, what just happened,
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
I only partially rewatched it because I have such a clear memory of having seen it. Um,
Sure.
yeah,
And I will say, kind of speaking to what you were saying, Devin, there was like Interstellar and I believe Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master,
The
Inherent
Master,
Vice too.
then
Yeah.
Dunkirk,
was
not too long afterwards. Yeah,
which was all 70
yeah.
millimeter,
I
and
didn't see The Master in theaters, but I did see Dunkirk.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, there's there is sort of a joke to be had about. I was kind of watching the Red Letter Media review of this film, and it's like you have the most gorgeous landscape camera, and you're only doing one location in this cabin, and it's
Yeah.
but I think it works. I mean, I think uh, just kind of spoiler alert. I actually loved this film, and
Nice.
I liked it a lot more than I remembered I did. And I think, yeah, seeing it on my own kind of certainly helped the experience, being able to kind of watch it without judgment or, what is wrong with you? Why do you enjoy this guy's movies? But no, I think it's phenomenal. And I honestly, hot take, I think I prefer this to Kill Bill.
Me too.
Um,
Mm.
I think it's amazing. I really really liked it, and I think especially now that I'm older and I've kind of seen Sam Peckinpah and maybe some of the films that he's kind of alluding to here. Um, I think it kind of only like deepened my appreciation for this. Yeah, I loved it. I thought the performances were fantastic. Um, I thought the cinematography was gorgeous. I mean, that's kind of like the main draw for this film, but the humor, I mean, the dialogue is incredibly sharp. Um, there's so much tension. It all just works and comes together. And I mean, the score, I don't even have to go into detail. I mean, it's fucking Ennio Morricone,
Oh
who's
yeah,
doing, yeah,
and
I mean,
that was a real break from Tarantino's tradition too, where he always used pre-written music. That way he could select the exact kind of vibe he was going for. This was a real break from that, where he actually did hire someone to compose music. Although he did also
well,
use some unused scores that Arena Morricone wrote prior, but there's also finally won Arena Morricone the Oscar for best score.
Yeah, the irony
well,
of that is pretty
yeah,
entertaining. But the thing is, Ennio Morricone scored for Django Unchained and Glorious Bastards, but you wouldn't know that because 75% of the soundtrack for those films are licensed music. And that kind of pissed me off about Django Unchained because like there's this great original score that they barely ever use, and apparently Ennio Morricone was really pissed about that because apparently something was lost in translation. Like he thought his soundtrack was going to be used way more than it was in the final cut, and he didn't know about it. And apparently, getting him to do this film was like quite the process. So yeah, it's just interesting that
no, and
like
he does.
I don't know if he like learned his lesson, quote unquote, or Ennio Morricone was just like, look, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right. Most of my music is gonna be in this movie.
Well, and yes,
Steven, you're saying? Yeah.
he borrows a couple of unused tracks from John Carpenter's The Thing. There's notably a track that is just absolutely beautiful, called Bestiality,
Yes.
which is a fugue, what they call in classical music a fugue. And it is really used to great effect here. There's actually a song I think that Morricone wrote for The Exorcist 2, which is
Mhm.
Reagan's theme, uh, The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, which is not a good movie at all. But they use it when the horses are going through the snow. There is, allusions to uh, films like Brian De Palma's Carrie. There's obviously, Sam Peckinpah. There's,
John
this
Carpenter.
is, yeah, John Carpenter. I mean, the whole thing is, and having Kurt Russell as part of the cast as well. Like, there's definitely those elements of like postmodern kind of like, taking all of these different elements and putting them in this
A
stew of
homage.
coffee brew, shall we say.
Well, as
Um,
long as you don't put your socks in the pot, I'm sure it'll taste just fine.
but no,
So yeah, go on.
I mean, I really, I'm struggling to find a lot of bad to say. I mean, the pacing is a little long, but I was never bored throughout the runtime. I think it did a good job of keeping my attention. Yeah,
Mhm.
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate and say Quentin Tarantino for me is unfortunately pretty hit and miss. Like, I
Ooh.
absolutely adore, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Inglourious Bastards, and Pulp Fiction. Like, those are his top three, and it kind of changes which one of those is my favorite from him. The Kill Bill movies are good. They're not great. They're good. They're fine.
I love them personally,
A
but
lot of
yeah.
people do, but I just think they're good, and part two is better than part one. Fight me. And every other film he's done, in my opinion, is either like reluctantly or okay, or just downright awful. Cough, duff proof. So I don't know, he's always been kind of hit and miss. I used to straight up hate him, but now it's just, we're just on a hit and miss basis because this film changed my mind about Quentin Tarantino. This film, I was like, damn, like this, this is kind of more of what I wanted from this director, honestly. As weird as it sounds, a lot of people were disappointed in this movie. And I think a big part of that is because they marketed it like Django Unchained because that was a huge success. It was one of his highest grossing movies. Everybody loved
There's one
it.
thing I have to say. I hated the marketing for both Django Unchained and this film. That
Yeah, well,
fucking
for
like
Django Unchained, at
hand clap,
least
stomp
some.
clap kind of sound cuts. It just made it sound really cheesy, like the way it was marketed. But
Yeah,
I knew not to pay attention to the trailer too much because I just wanted to go in and experience it for what it was.
fair
Um,
enough.
this is like the peak of my film school snobbery. Also watching these films in 70 millimeter.
Yeah, a little bit of bias, I guess. But here's the thing: like, at least for Django Unchained, it kind of fits the tone. But for this movie, it doesn't fit at all because people went into this movie expecting Django Unchained, like, oh, it's like a dark comedy, like satire on colonization and slavery, and it's kind of like a fun, over the top romp with darker elements. Whereas this one is like, no, this is a cruel, sadistic, slow burn murder mystery with deliberately unlikable characters and funny moments, but nowhere near compared to Django Unchained in that regard. Like, it's a very, very, very different tone, and trailers didn't reflect that at all. And I'm wondering if all of the bad ratings and mixed reception came from the fact that it just wasn't marketed properly.
Well, I mean, if you see interviews with Tarantino, I mean, he talks about that this was really coming from a place of anger and a place of, just disgust with a lot of kind of injustices and kind of social issues that he was noticing here in America. And he actually was like, I didn't intend for this to be like as much of a social commentary as it wound up being, but it just kind of like I found that in writing it.
Yeah, it's just like
And
wow, it really says a lot about society and cabin fever.
well, well, I mean, and he even talked about like, this was also kind of right around the time of the like Black Lives Matter, police protests. There was actually a large group of police officers that totally boycotted this film. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can attribute a lot of different things to this film not maybe doing as well as it could have. I mean, also just the fact that it's a 3-hour Western murder mystery. You know
Longer
what
if
I
you
mean?
watch the intermission cut.
Yeah, or even longer if you watch the extended Netflix
That you can only
miniseries.
watch in the States. I'm still salty about that. You can
Yeah,
only watch that
I
in the
was
States.
looking that up earlier to see if you could get it. I was watching the 2 hour 35 minute version. Um,
Well, in fairness, I mean, I think a lot of the added runtime is because it's cut into 4 chapters. There's like credits at the end of each episode. So,
That's funny.
but
mhm.
but I mean, at the same time, I really admire that he's a filmmaker who's even trying to turn a film of his into a mini series. Like, I think that's kind of admirable in and of itself that he's constantly pushing the genre and kind of like seeing what's possible with
Yeah.
film.
Well, part of that is because it
Um,
has like a huge cult following behind that. Like, apparently, like the Blu-ray and DVD sales for this was like way higher than the actual like overall box office for this film. Like, nobody, unfortunately, hardly
Yeah.
anybody saw this film in theaters when it came out. Part of that was because of the weird release where they released the 70mm cut first, and then they released the film like 2 weeks afterwards. And at that point, nobody was really talking about it, so nobody really knew it came out. Plus, it's kind of a weird time for movies in general. A lot of people rightfully think, like January movie releases are bad, and they're only really fishing out movies, nominated for Oscars at that point. So it's just lost in that sea of horror releases.
Well, also, I mean, this is a very, I can't stress this enough.
It's very dark. It's probably the darkest movie he's made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very mean-spirited. It's
the most... Yeah, it's the most like nihilistic, and there's a scene that absolutely kills me. And it's after the big twist happens at the toward the latter half of it, when they find out that this was all a setup, who to guess. And it shows how just callously and coldly they killed everybody in Mini Sabadashri. And there's the one scene where it's Zoe Bell, and she's just like very desperately kind of grabbing on, you know, for her life, and they just very callously kind of murder her. That to me was just like the darkest like kill I've seen in a Tarantino film, and that still like gives me chills.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like, Deep Focus Lens reviewed this movie, and I actually agreed with a lot of she was saying. She's also very hit and miss on Tarantino, like I am. And she said, like, normally in Tarantino movies, the violence is very like bombastic and kind of silly and ridiculous and over the top. But in this, all of the violence is genuinely disturbing and sickening. Like, you're not supposed to watch it and be like, wow, that's cool. You watch it and it feels like the way it's filmed and the way it's shot, like you're experiencing something like shocking and horrible. And the puking scene in particular, like very few, bits of violence in movies really get a response out of me because I've just seen so much of it at this point. But that puking scene after they drink the poison was so disturbing, and my mom was literally watching that. She was like covering her eyes and like fighting back tears because Obi died. And God, it is so disturbing. And Tarantino never really does that kind of violence, which I thought was kind of interesting.
But the most disturbing part of this film to me is the guitar scene, which I have to go on a little mini rant about.
God.
Go for it.
They had on loan a real, like, authentic relic guitar. I believe it was Gibson. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, and $1 million.
It is a valuable, like, rare instrument from that is period accurate, and they wanted that for like the scene. And I can't remember if it was in the script that he would like take it out of her hand and smash it.
Nope, wasn't.
They had a prop guitar, I think, for this, and by prop I just mean like probably a cheap one that looks like it. And then they might have relicked up, but he smashed the original one, which breaks my little musician's heart, and I'd say it's. I'm gonna commit to the bet. I'd say it's on par with Alec Baldwin.
Oh God!
Jesus Christ!
I felt so offended by what I saw.
Oh God! Yeah, I just gotta know what the fuck happened there. Like, how did
y'all?
Like,
I enjoyed it.
Oh God!
We're done.
Yeah, Kurt Russell. Like, how did Kurt Russell not know that was the original guitar? Is my question. Like, how did nobody tell him like that's the original guitar? Like, I feel like
you can also very faintly hear Jennifer Jason Leigh's voice crack.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not faint at all. Like she was absolutely shocked. It's like whoa, like what the fuck?
She even like looks Kurt, off camera for a bit. Yeah, like Kurt, what's going on?
She breaks her accent that she's doing the whole movie, and it's like it's like it reminded me of
genuine shock. Yeah.
Well, it reminded me of when we talked about like Midnight Cowboy, and there's that whole like, hey, I'm walking here, but his voice cracks, and like that's not a part of the take.
Yeah,
it's fucking great. I mean, I'm sorry about the guitar, but also, I mean,
it works for the scene,
at least they captured it beautifully, as horrific as it is.
Yeah, and also the way it's shot beforehand, like
I'd be so pissed if I was the museum owner there, or just as
I agree, but he did compensate for it. Kurt Russell did take it out of his paycheck, which does somewhat make up for it. and he was like pretty sorry. Like apparently there's behind the scenes where he's just like, I am so sorry. I didn't know what happened. Please tell me that was on camera. And they're like, yeah, you're fucking lucky it was on camera. They were so
Yeah.
mad at him for good reason. But at the same time, he should have known. But in fairness, the scene, yeah, it is great. I love the long take of her playing the guitar, and it focuses in on people drinking the coffee. Then it focuses back on her playing the guitar, like pretending not to notice, and a lot of like great attention to detail and really good tension, and like even the little things like. Another problem I have with Tarantino movies is that I feel like all of the characters can kind of feel like they're written the same way, like they all talk the same way. If you had it so
Yep.
they were all played by the same actor, you could not tell who's who by any means. But the writing in this, every single character feels so different to the point where, spoiler alert, everybody is in on it. As it turns out, everybody in the cabin is in on it, and they're working with the domain grain gain. But the way the prisoners are written, you can tell how, on the rewatch, they're lying, but you can tell how good they are at lying from the writing. Whereas, like, Oswaldo Mowbray's writing feels very articulate and exaggerated, like he's practiced this, he's done this kind of thing before. But Joe Gage gives, like, these very simple answers. He doesn't really elaborate on anything, so he's not really all that great at lying. And compare that to Bob, who has a very entertaining dynamic with Samuel Jackson. He always like answers too quickly. Like he's always like just gives an immediate answer to everything. And I think a good example of that is, you can help me with the horses. I'll help you with the horses. And it's like, no. And Samuel Jackson's like, you are working in the middle of a blizzard and you say no? Like, like he clearly just fought like too fast. He didn't think over like how Samuel Jackson would react to that and think about that just through the dialogue. And it's so articulate and detailed.
Well,
and
and
I kind of wish the writing was on par with that in more of his movies, in my
well, to me, I mean, um, our Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Pulp Fiction, and Jackie Brown, and I feel like Jackie Brown. And I know you have your problems with it, Ian, but I feel like Jackie Brown is one of his few films that is very mature and very different from the rest of his filmography. And I think it's
That's true.
about,
Yeah.
I feel like it's about older people and their reaction to things is different. Their timing of how they react and what they do. It's very outside the sort of normal, Tarantino-esque shoot first, ask later kind of thing. There's a lot of plotting and scheming and so on and so forth. And I kind of admire that about Jackie Brown. And, I mean, he is one of those directors that, it's like he's in a weird spot for me because I acknowledge he's not like the greatest filmmaker ever. I don't even think he would agree with that. But it's like, at the same time, like I have this sort of sense of nostalgia because, like a lot of college age white guys who, fell in love with cinema, it's like I owe a lot of my interest in filmmaking to Reservoir Dogs. And that film may look different for someone else. I mean, I'm sure there were lots of guys that saw Clerks or lots of guys that saw something else or Do
Drive.
the Right Thing or Evil Dead 2 or whatever, but like Reservoir Dogs was the first movie that I saw where I was like, I could actually make a movie. Like you didn't have to have this, like all you had to have was a group of people, one location, and it worked,
This movie
and
captures
that
that vibe, in my opinion, a lot
it
better.
does. Well, it does. And I mean, but it's also on a bigger scale. I mean, this is kind of like,
That's fair.
this is like 60 million, and I think Reservoir Dogs was like 1.8.
That's
Um,
fair too. And he was inexperienced at the time as well, so
oh, sure. And I mean, Reservoir Dogs is not a perfect movie by any means, but it's like, there's still that like weird sense of nostalgia of like how important he was for me, like starting my journey. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think this film was phenomenal. I loved it, the humor, the dialogue. Um, One thing that I that really stood out to me, and I remembered it the first time that I watched this film, and it still held up really well, was Tim Roth's speech about justice versus frontier justice.
Hmm.
I think
Mm.
that is like top 10 Tarantino monologues,
So
like
good.
maybe even top five. It is fantastic.
It's even better
Yeah,
with the twist.
the whole concept of dispassion is really fascinating, but then the irony of the twist of it all, I think, is very fitting as well.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
I do have a question for you guys because this was something that I think was very controversial at the time. I kind of hinted at this when I was recalling how my mom reacted. But um, so so you guys know, Tarantino. If you've ever read his screenplays, he's like very uh, he uses a lot of prose. His sort of script writing process is almost like a novel. And he's
Hmm.
even talked about that there are things that don't wind up in the finished product because they're things that we're never going to see. And so there was a lot of debate about the treatment of the one female character in this movie. And Tarantino talked about that he felt like it was justified because he came to know who this woman really was. And I'm wondering, just based on what we saw, uh, not the sort of extended lore that we're not privy to based on, his own writing process, but like, what's you guys' opinion on the violence against the Daisy Domergue character? Is it justified? Is it problematic? I mean, like, I'm genuinely curious here, like,
Hmm.
because I think it works. I think it works in the context of this film.
In the context of the movie, that's just it. Like, this is a world where all of the characters are deliberately unlikable, at least to a certain degree. And I feel like in order to sell that world, you can't have characters be nice to women or call, people of a different skin color, words, tell them things they want to hear. Like, if you want to display a world of authenticity, you kind of have to commit to the bit to a certain extent. And I feel like that's something a lot of filmmakers have forgotten to do. That said, and this is going to sound a little weird, but you're going to have to hear me out. I would argue the depiction of Daisy Darmague is actually a symbol of her power because, yeah, she gets beaten up a lot, but how does she react to it? She smiles, she laughs, she's unaffected by it. Despite the fact that she's always chained up and always beaten up, she's always she always holds the room. She always knows everything that's going on, and she always like never like kind of backs down. She never like kind of surrenders to misery or gives up in any way, shape, or form. Even when she's like nearly dying at the end of the movie, she's still trying to worm her way out of it and desperately try to find a way out. And it's only when they narrowly like kill her and hang her at the end is when they finally overcome her. So I think there is an argument. It's kind of I heard a similar argument for Amy and Gone Girl, but I think it's a similar argument of yes, they're a bad, terrible, mean person that a lot of people kind of verbally and physically abuse throughout the story. But I think through that abuse, you could make the argument that because they handled the abuse with a smile on their face, and the fact that it is such a cruel and unforgiving world, you can make the argument that's kind of the point. That maybe they are being a little
Well,
too harsh to her, and maybe
it,
they are treating her like the way she is. Like this isn't exactly a world where people like give each other handshakes and it was the one line. It's just like oh, you want to go? You all want to grab some cocoa and cuddle up by the fire?
yeah. Well, I mean, and that I agree with you. I mean, there is something
And also, she's a
maybe.
villain. Like, I'm so sick of people being
Well,
like, I don't like
no,
that people are treating the villain in a mean way or that the villain is a bad person. They're the
well, and I
villain.
think
I'm sorry.
I kind of agree with you. Maybe there is something empowering about the fact that she's
Mhm.
not treated with kid gloves.
Exactly.
in a really weird, sort of ironic
And I
way.
don't mean anything by that, so just for future reference, like I don't condone
No,
that kind
yeah,
of
of
behavior in
course.
real life, but in the case of this movie, I don't think it's an issue personally. But I'm curious to
No,
hear what
and I
Devin thinks before we move
yeah.
on. Devin?
Oh, we're assuming that I thought I had a thought.
Yes, I was
We were
assuming that
both
you had a fun.
concerned.
Head empty. It's been a long week for all of us. I get it.
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, violence against women isn't cool. Although in the context of the story, it makes sense why it's happening, and they are, looking at the past unabashedly with, the attitudes that were then. So it's authentic in that regard. And I
Yeah.
remember showing this um to one girl when I was at school when I was you know when this movie was still fresh, and I think she still enjoyed it regardless of that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It is interesting though, just to see what the different
Well,
attitudes are like,
But
and
the
how far can you push that is the question.
exactly. And my mom, I watched this movie with my mom, and she absolutely hated it. She said, like, oh, this was terrible. Kurt Russell was awful. I mean, I love you, mom, but you're okay to be wrong sometimes. But she said Daisy Darwin was the best character in the movie. Like, that was actually her favorite part. So her issues had nothing to do with her character and the treatment of her character. Her issue was everything else. So I just thought that was interesting.
Well, and it's also interesting because there's been debate again. I don't know if you guys saw this, but like Lee Daniels weighed in and said that Tarantino did not have the right to use the gamer word, shall we say?
Oh, for crying out
Um,
loud.
and here's the thing. I mean, if you look at Lee Daniels' filmography, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but he made The Paperboy, and it is one of the worst films I've ever seen. Um, but even
Which
aside
film?
from that,
The
it's
Paperboy with Zac
the
Efron.
Paperboy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's terrible. And even if it wasn't terrible, there are plenty of white people that say that word in that movie because even though the movie is not great, it does fit the context of the film. And I don't necessarily agree that it should be okay if it fits the context of one film, but not if it also
But a
fits the
black person
context of
wrote it,
another
so it's
film.
different.
Yeah, I don't think it is different. I think that's the problem.
I think a big
I think
part of why I don't care is that all of the black actors that work with him are okay with it. Samuel Jackson literally had to tell Leonardo DiCaprio to take it easy and just accept it, and Django Unchained, and tell him like everything's all right. Like, does that
well,
sound like a racist director where like the black actors surrounding them have no issue with the dialogue that comes their
well, didn't
way?
he didn't he tell DiCaprio he's like this is just another
No,
motherfucking
Tuesday
Tuesday.
for us. Oh yeah.
Like
But he was like trying to be like genuine, just like, dude, it's fine. It's a movie. Don't
yeah.
worry about it.
No, definitely. And I mean, for what it's worth, I think all of that stuff is very justified in this film. If I had to sum this film up in so many words, it's like peck and paw by way of stage play.
Yeah, no,
And
I could see a good stage adaptation of this if done
oh,
right.
absolutely. And I fucking love this film. I can't think of enough good things to say. You only need to hang mean bastards.
And mean
But mean
bastards
bastards
need
you
to
need to
hang.
hang. Yeah.
So
Should we
good.
do ratings?
Great out of 10.
9.6.
Damn.
Nice. I'm gonna give it an
Loved
8.
it.
Nice.
Okay.
No, I'd say it's one of my favorites of his. It gets better every time I watch it. I wouldn't say it's among his best, but outside of Pulp Fiction, I don't come to his films as often as this one. Like Inglorious
Yeah.
Bastards, like I watched it again because my friend wanted to watch it. This and Pulp Fiction are the only Tarantino films I go out of my way to watch. And even though
I
they
don't.
aren't exactly his best movie, I'd argue Inglorious Bastards is probably his best. But I'd say they're this is among his most rewatchable for sure.
Well, and here's the thing. I wouldn't say this is his best either per se, but I don't know. I'd put it top 5 for sure,
Easily.
easily. And with that, I should announce the Christmas from a Hat episode.
All right.
It's all been leading up to this. So for the first 3 films, we have Tangerine by Sean Baker.
What?
Yeah, so this was Aaron's idea. I even linked an article in the comments that says from Entertainment Weekly why Tangerine is the best Christmas movie that's unconventional. So we'll be getting into that. We'll be talking about another Sam Jackson film that is Remy Harlan's The Long Kiss Goodnight from a Shane Black script. We've got Gina Davis, Samuel L. Jackson. We have that was also my suggestion. I should mention Tangerine was Aaron's. Shout out to Aaron. Shout out to me. Tad, our friend of the show, Tad, recommended Krampus.
Yeah.
Horror. That is our 3rd film. And
it's Krampus, not Krampus.
Okay, Krampus, whatever. Now, as a bonus here, this is why I had you roll more than once, because Drew suggested a made-for-TV Christmas special that's only a half hour long, and so
what
we
is
can
it?
definitely. Oh boy, it is the Rap City Street Kids Believe in Santa.
I'm sorry? Could you say that one more time in slow motion, because I couldn't believe my fucking ears.
The Rap City Street Kids Believe in Santa.
Oh, I'm sure this film will be very politically correct. Looking forward to it.
And culturally sensitive.
Absolutely.
It is only 40 minutes long. It only aired
Drew, where do you find this shit?
He has connections.
Once, and it has never been seen again. It is widely
Probably
considered
for good reason.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to spoil it. Let's just let the Christmas spirit fill us when we review these films next week.
Oh boy. Well, anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. If we don't see you next time on the podcast, happy holidays, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. However you want to celebrate this holiday season, our hearts go out to you. It's been a rough week for all of us, but thank you so much for tuning in. This episode made me feel a little bit better. Hopefully made you feel a little bit better as well, guys. Stay tuned for Conan, and it's the first day up. Have a great night, guys.
Hey-o.
See ya.
Good night.